Alright, let's take another trip to the shelter area of the movie Derelict. And I'm going to try not to let myself get carried away, but we're going to do something that's a little bit special for me tonight. We're going to take a look at my collection of releases of Antonio Margheriti's Web of the Spider, his 1971 Technicolor remake of Castle of Blood, is a great masterpiece with Barbara Steele from 1964, black and white. Classic Euro horror experiment in terror. This is a Sinister Cinema VHS release of the print actually called Castle of Terror, not Castle of Blood. Not sure what I just said there. And for whatever reason, in 1970-71, he got convinced that it was time to do a big budget remake. He was working with Peter Karsten, a German actor and film producer at the time, and Karsten may have had a hand in convincing Margheriti to go for it. He assembled a nice cast with Klaus Kinski, Anthony Franziosa, Michelle Mercier, Karen Field, Raph Baldassar, my hero, and a bunch of other dignitaries, and it was a disastrous flop. Not sure why, but it just didn't translate well into the widescreen. But as with most of these films that I've got something of an obsession with, I encountered it on television as a young person, and it not only scared the bejesus out of me, but certain elements stuck with me. Namely, the white guy with the white hair and the beard going into the basement, and then Anthony Franziosa with his little 4-barrel pepperbox. I believe it's a copy of a Remington pepperbox pistol that he's given for courage, which proves very ineffective against the specters of the murdered victims of a suicide and murder spree many years before. I'm not going to go on any more about the film, except to say that it turned up on a box set by Brentwood Entertainment, who I think is now Mill Creek, if I'm not mistaken. And the memory rattle went off, and I started trying to find a more complete version. The English version was, of course, cut down by Cinema Shares to about 90 minutes on the nose, and formatted for television in a miserable pan and scan version. This is, I think, the first release of it I came upon, other than the Brentwood DVD. It's by Timeless Video, and quite honestly, all the English language versions up until now have been as good as the other, although I was, of course, tempted to go to overseas releases to try to find a more complete version. Billy Baranis at Deathland hooked me up with this tape, which is essentially the same English language version in full screen, but with slightly better color. I think this one came from Miltados Cordius, Cineland. Can't remember what he called himself. But again, I think this one's a full screen version, again, of the English print. Although eventually I specifically let them know what I was looking for, and they dug up the Greek tape of the widescreen print here with a Dutch title on it, in der Greek der Spien, but it is very much I wouldn't say widescreen, but it's about a 1 to 48 to 1 transfer of the Italian print, pretty much all of it, running in about 104 minutes. So it's still not the complete film, but it was enough for certain companies, underground companies, to put out on a DVD-R or something like that. I've also got a Midnight Video VHS of it that served me well until I was able to find the Greek tape. Another related release is this Dutch version, which I guess came before this on, I think Eagle Video is the label here, and this is the same, about 1 to 48 to 1 transfer in Italian, but with Dutch subtitles. And Fred Frey at Luminous had the presence of mind to have a friend who spoke Dutch translate the Dutch subtitles and then superimposed it on it to give the first translation of the Italian print for English language audiences. And it was a very serviceable release. But again, the version runs at about 104 minutes. Described length is 107 minutes, so that's not quite it. I looked further and found this marvelous CCAM format tape from France. I want to say it's on Panther Video. I'm totally unfamiliar with French home video companies, but it was the first true widescreen version of the film I got to see. I believe it's at 1:85:1, so it's not the true scope. Web of the Spider was a 2:35:1 scope film, but it was close enough. And again, it's about 100. It's a little bit longer, about 105 minutes. But it lacks scrolling end titles, amongst other things. So it still wasn't complete, and we kept on looking. Here's another PAL tape. I think this one came from Britain. And again, unfortunately, it just shows the full screen English print, though I was intrigued by the rated R restricted label on the note on the cover for an MPAA rating of R, which is how the film was released in the United States. And allegedly, we're getting the R-rated complete uncut English language transfer on a DVD this fall. There's a couple of tapes there that I used the cover to adapt for. I believe that's the Midnight Video VHS, which is the Greek subtitled Italian print. As a completist would do, I also sought out the Spanish language version when I had it confirmed that a Spanish language assembly was made. First version I was able to find was on a Betamax. Country of origin is probably Spain, maybe Portugal, I'm not sure. I've never gotten to see it, but fortunately a tape turned up with pretty much the same title, Tela de Arana, Atrapado de Tela de Arana, on this one, which is Trapped in the Web of the Spider, I believe. Literal translation, gorgeous cover, love it. And I did post a transfer of this to my primary YouTube account. I'm not sure where they got that from. It's not in the movie, but it's a very strange version of the film with some different music, different audio cues, worth taking a look at. And the collecting binge for this almost should have come to a conclusion with the tape release on PAL from Italy by Mondadori Video, showing the anamorphic widescreen version of it, running the described 107 minutes with the scrolling and titles. Although again, it's a 1:85 anamorphic shoot rather than a 2:35:1 scope shoot. But it was the first release of the complete film that I was able to lay my hands on. I had Midnight Video transfer it to disc, and we shared it with a few collectors. And then, while this was going on, struck up a relationship or a pen pal friendship with Eduardo Margariti, who sent me a marvelous 2:35:1 scope version of the complete film with the scrolling end titles. I believe that version is now pretty much easy to find on YouTube. And a surprise that turned up was through eBay. I was actually buying posters and bought one from Germany and told the guy I was a nut for the film. And he's like, well, I've got this version that aired on German cable of the film called Dracula and Schloss des Schreckens, that's different than the DVD release, and had, it turned out, an extra scene not present in any of them. I call it the stable scene, where what's his name? Raph Baldassare tries to confront Michelle Mercier, and they end up having sex. Something cut from every other version of the film. She was a little troublemaker. Excuse me. I'm hoping that it's somehow integrated into the DVD that's coming out. It should be, or at least as a bonus. And if anyone wants to try again, they can get in touch with me. That's that was a score. People asked me for years what's the best English language version to find, and I was always happy with Sinister Cinema's NTSC format VHS transfer. I believe they put it on a DVD-R at some point, although I was always happy with the VHS. Did a great job with Castle of Blood. They just didn't make a cover for it, and we can live with that. Incredibly Strange Filmworks also had it, although it was identical to Sinister's, so I just made myself a reference copy and kept that. Something Weird Video had it on a very interesting VHS for a while. It's a different transfer, noticeably different transfer than what Sinister Cinema had. Different pan scan, and the sound was somewhat more tinny, I remember. I doubt they still issue it. They might be able to gouge you up a on-demand DVD-R, but I tend to doubt it, because the public domain circuit, of course, had a feeding frenzy with the film for a couple of years. That's kind of a nice cover. There's one that's a little bit less nice. Diamond Entertainment, you know your film has gone bust when Diamond has DVDs of it in the bargain racks. And I told people, seriously, just seek out whoever's little paper sleeve thing this is. It's absolutely the same as the Sinister tape. And Brentwood, again, they were the first DVD release of it I found on a box set called Circus of Death, which they discontinued, I believe, and put it on a single disc release, which I sold for a while until someone correctly pointed out that cover not just has nothing to do with the film, but is just awful. The German guy who sold me helped me find the cable version also sold me a Super 8 print in German. I think we're losing the focus here on this now. It's been a tough week on the camera. Let's try it, maybe just zooming in a little bit there, because I don't have time to shoot this again. I've never seen this. It's in German, Super 8. I doubt, or I know that it does not run the complete length of the film, but I'd still love to see it at some point. Here's a couple of soundtrack CDs obtained from other collectors, and it always drove me crazy that they reused the music for the Seven Deaths in the Cat's Eye soundtrack. I can't watch that film without just getting a headache, because it's the Web of the Spider music. And the last maybe bit I should cover is the story actually based on anything by Edward Allan Poe? And the answer is no. Although in the Web of the Spider version, which is missing from the Castle of Blood, Klaus Kinski opens up the film with portions of Bernice, one of Poe's. I guess it's a short story. It's only a few pages, and he of course only covers some of it. And then there's another story about two men making a gentleman's bet between each other that roughly inspired the beginning, but no, there is no Edgar Allan Poe story called The Night of the Walking Dead, which is the title they gave specifically to the source material for Web of the Spider. And it's a faux pas, or a fallacy of some sort. Last thing maybe I will mention is that I engaged in some correspondence with Tim Lucas of Video Watchdog, and coughed up some old versions of editions of Video Watchdog that cover Marguerite. It's part of my research, and Tim was very kind to help me, amongst other things, with a 16:9 version of Planet on the Prowl, long before it was released on DVD as War Between the Planets, and I have a version of that to share off of the Derelict Movies channel. But anyway, here's the Web of the Spider obsession as it currently runs. Can't wait to see the DVD, and we'll see you next time with some more. Look at them googly eyes, yo.